Curious about those forgotten casseroles that Mom made famous at the family table? As you daydream about that perfect casserole, let us regale you with 20 masterpieces that have sadly vanished. Firstly, fine dining and delectable foods are the perfect themes to start our list, and there is no better dish to represent that than chicken divan. Chicken casseroles stuffed with broccoli, cheese, and a special sauce. Not just any sauce from down the alley, this was the signature taste of the Divan Parisian restaurant, which actually invented chicken divans in New York City around the early 20s. Hence the association with fine dining, and its price matched its aesthetic. Like seriously, this thing cost you $1 and then some back then. Naturally though, everyone could not spread their bank account, so do-it-yourself, cheaper alternatives of the dish came around. For those who could get it, they would gladly shill out their wallets for something so divine though, and that is the saddest part of it all. You could not find an authentic chicken divan anywhere if you tried even in a home chef's kitchen. In contrast, green bean casserole is a dish that reminds you of home. Bean casserole with mushroom soup that reminds you of afternoons spent driving to your aunt's or your vegan uncle who claims he makes an allegedly good one. Historically, the soup was something that America went more towards in the 80s and 90s. Remember our past videos had things like deep-fried cheese balls and whatnot? Yeah, that just could not last, and being honest, nobody expected it to. Definitely a you-had-to-be-there moment that would be overshadowed by people wanting to eat healthier. Probably to make up for past dietary sins, these people came to worship easy recipes like the green bean casserole. Sadly, nowadays, people prefer much more vibrant-tasting soups that do not make them feel like they are only eating it for the health benefits. While we have one creating a luxury eating experience and the other being a healthy way to enjoy a classic, beef and noodles casserole is something that simply raises questions. Yes, people had many fond memories of coming back home from a bad date or a long shift to a cup of beef and egg noodles. Lines have to be drawn just as much as delectable food needs to be consumed, and Americans drew theirs by putting it in a casserole. Ground beef and egg noodles in a tomato sauce sure seemed like a good dose of Mom's spaghetti. Only Mother Dearest never made her casseroles that way. Her spaghetti, meatballs, and her casserole pies were always separate dinners. Most old or middle-aged folk wanted to keep those customs, but the newer generations at the time were more open to it. Popular among the young crowd bold enough to try out new dishes, it eventually faded away as more and more people rejected the mix. Scalloped potatoes, on the other hand, were a type of fusion food, if you could call it that, which people gladly welcomed with open arms. Thinly sliced potatoes that were put in a casserole dish and baked with cream or milk till the potatoes hit just the right amount of softness. End results were quite impressive as well, with people later adding cheese and fried onions to make various different fun ideas on the dish. As far as happy foods go, it may have left out the more filling and savory aspects of a standard casserole, but it was unmatched in terms of taste. Many movie marathons have been sustained purely on scalloped potatoes and some hot wings or potato wedges. People truly love this simple yet sweet dish, which seemed to give them a childish sense of glee. Lots of folk tend to find new favorite foods pretty fast, though, and old ones like scalloped potatoes become history book pages. Chicken pot pie. Casserole needs no explaining because it takes 3 things the citizens of the U.S. love and makes them into one polished, perfect food. Firstly, a chicken pot pie, the kind you are used to your mother making or your dad picking up from that great spot at every corner. Then you paired chicken pot pie with a casserole dish and topped it off with a biscuit topping, which made for the perfect savory flavor. You had yourself a dish that gave the crunchy, the gooey, the tangy, and the food coma all in one. One that people had in every state during holidays, as this dish would be center stage on the dinner table. Man, this was even widespread enough that people would sometimes bring it into work. It really makes you think, what made something like that go out of fashion? Maybe people wanted to move away from dishes that had nothing but meaty flavors with cheeses and sauces. Corn pudding is a dish that may not have been as grand as the rest so far, but it was a simple DIY casserole that made your day. Corn pudding was made with stewed corn and thickening agents that helped give it a pudding or custard-like texture. However, it was not typically baked in a traditional casserole case. Instead, it had a custard dish that the pudding would go into and then be baked in. Now, down in the South, this was the food gospel. People just loved it all over, especially in less urban areas where corn was widely and daily consumed, particularly during times of economic uncertainty when households had to cut corners in the kitchen. Corn pudding was a cheap and easy-to-make casserole that was not too shabby. Nowadays, people like that have moved more to poaching local wildlife than taking Mother Nature's gifts, and as a result, corn pudding went extinct too. The hamburger helper casserole takes the flashiness factor and ups it to a 10 unlike corn pudding. Blurring the lines between a casserole and lasagna, this dish also blurred the lines between a simple Tuesday baking session and a literal gift of God. Consisting of pasta, hamburger patties, and a cheesy sauce layered on top, this mixture was then baked into a casserole. As you kept getting deeper into the behemoth, the more irresistible it would get. Although this dish was really high in saturated fats and calories, most doctors recommended avoiding trendy foods like these for their link to heart problems too. Hence, people took much more cautionary attitudes toward their line blurring, making hamburger helper pizzas a thing of the past. Now let's put the Frankenburger casseroles and chicken pot pies aside and go back to a real icon like the shepherd's pie. Your mother knows of this, her mother knows of this, her mother's dad knows of this, and his fourth cousin had this every year for family gatherings. Not an exaggeration by any means, the shepherd's pie really was just that loved across every state. Just simple meats like lamb or ground beef cooked or minced to their limit, baked and topped with mashed potatoes in a casserole. Literally, what more does a person even ask of a plate of food? Can we get much higher? Was the question on most chefs' minds, as shepherd's pie was hard to improve on, making the market highly competitive. No one had one unique standout shepherd's pie, and most were as good as each other. Of course, that meant great things for customers, but sadly, those days of privilege and good-tasting casseroles are gone now. Shepherd's pie is more a Southern tradition than a statewide phenomenon now. Here is a casserole that came from Latin American cuisine and worked really well, which is the infamous Mexican egg casserole. Typically stuffed with popular Mexican spices and chilies, along with eggs baked into a dish jam packed with cheese, this meant that you had no worries. Ordering this meant you were getting twice the bang for your buck. No tastes were coming close to the area of flavors this was in, and none that tried to copy it succeeded. See, American flavors do work, but they often have a certain blandness. Spices are not as prevalent in traditional American cuisine, and dishes like these help fill that gap. Mexican egg casseroles were a common find at any Latin American diner or restaurant, perfect as takeout, a meal to enjoy on a date, or even as a treat to savor all by yourself. Nowadays, most restaurants do not commonly sell this casserole anymore, but some old-school Mexican joints may still make a mean one. This one is definitely something that did not sit well with some while it was something being served at every dinner for others. The tuna noodle casserole was a divider, a controversy raiser, if you will, and one that set people into arguments across every forum, thread, and tweet out there. Some people said that America was too stuck in the brief moments where it hit culinary gold and needed to experiment more if it wanted to recreate those highs. Others said there was no need of messing up a dish that worked fine on its own, always has, and already has 100 different versions. So what you had was something you had to ask your friends if they were okay with, or else you were ordering out. When you see it from that angle, tuna noodle casseroles could never have really lasted too long. Just like its predecessor on this list, baked spaghetti casseroles did not last too long either. We remember well and clear what people's candid opinions on beef and noodles casserole was. A lot of the millennial crowd believed that it was a dish with no real sense of self. Like, if you want spaghetti, just have spaghetti. Casseroles are somewhere else on the spectrum, and maybe they were right in avoiding it without even a single try. Some people did give it a fair shot, though, and ended up liking it, but the general consensus was that spaghetti sauces do not go well with casserole dishes. Nor do they fare well when baked with cheese. Baked spaghetti casseroles kind of had a cult following, and because of that, they never lasted long enough to be more than a footnote in the ages. Here's another one that takes hearty inspirations from our Mexican neighbors. Enchiladas casseroles were the talk of the town when they first showed up. See some people randomly combining foods that work just fine. Solo are not mad scientists. They are real visionaries, and there is a tunnel with a light at the end only they can see. In this case, the luminescence came from the light bulb that went off in people's heads when they thought two things. Why not use layered tortillas with enchiladas and other vegetables? Kick it up a notch with a sauce that actually worked in casseroles paired with cheesy meat, and you had a winner. Every winner must let go of their championship belt someday, and these were no exception. Yet chicken and rice casseroles, despite employing similar ideas of basic dishes that work great along with a fine casserole, did not hit as well as people thought it would. The textures of grilled chunks of chicken with rice, gravy, or a spicy sauce and cheese were not appealing. Not as much as it theoretically should be, but so many things are better in imagination than on a plate at your table. Chicken and rice casseroles definitely were something that had a very natural fall into irrelevance. They did not have much of a presence back in the day either. People wanted their casseroles to feel like a buffed-up pizza, and this just was not doing that for folks. So it has become an idea health-obsessed housewives from the 70s may remember. Cozy hearty food went to its golden age with the advent of tamale pies. Tamale pies were a casserole dish that included enchilada sauces, tamales, ground beef, cheese, and a spicy tomato sauce. And of course, something for the crunch, which cornmeal crust did a great job at providing. Nothing rivaled the sensation of a good tamale pie, which you could find in any respectable restaurant, especially in cities in the Southwest. Most of these savory-type dishes that challenge the tame spice tolerance of an average Joe get popular down south. Perhaps they could share their flair for spice with other regions of the USA someday. Unfortunately, the dish reminded a family tradition after its days in the spotlight and dwindled from kitchens, now largely being a fond memory. Macaroni and cheese casserole had a proud and very cherished career in that bright period after things like tamale pies became more popular. Also, it is one of the only pasta and cheese casserole dishes to really work. Turns out, two foods known for being a reliable friend when in need of one become your bestie when you put them together. Almost too soft, completely filled with cheese and chewy hot macaroni with all the perks of a casserole, this dish was a certified MVP of the 70s and 80s. However, it eventually got out of hand when people began creating excessively fatty versions with more cheese, sausages, and other toppings. Since then, it has gone down in rank because you gotta care about your gut too, you know? A healthy contrast to the macaroni and cheese casserole is the zucchini tomato casserole. Often served with soy and onion dipping sauce, children preferred to stay away from this vegetable casserole, but adults loved the taste. If you have ever seen the film Ratatouille, the zucchini tomato casserole looks exactly like the main dish served up at the end. With sliced zucchini and tomatoes arranged in layered patterns and a hearty topping of cheese and breadcrumbs, the zucchini tomato casserole was truly ratatouille coming to life. This casserole was preferred to be consumed during summers, as the tomatoes and zucchini were a refreshing alternative to heavier casseroles. Over time, the dish became less common amongst home chefs due to children disliking the vegetable base in this casserole. As fewer people cooked the casserole for dinner, it eventually disappeared from tables completely. The King Ranch chicken on the bright side was beloved by children and adults alike. There is no questioning why the dish was popular amongst people, as one of the main ingredients was tortilla chips. Now we know how liked chips are in the States. Make it part of a food item, and you have a potential fan favorite on the dinner table. It helped that making the King Ranch chicken was a quick and easy process. All you had to do was have slices of boneless chicken layered on tortilla chips, then add a layer of cheese and creamy tomato sauce. With just a few simple steps, your King Ranch chicken was ready. People presumed this casserole to be more of an appetizer snack rather than a dinner item, but that did not stop people from having their fair share of cheesy tortillas throughout dinner time. Eventually, modern nachos recipes replaced the place of King Ranch chicken on dinner tables, causing it to become a forgotten gem. You may be familiar with broccoli casseroles, but did you know that pearl onion broccoli bake was a popular variant amongst people who enjoyed broccoli but wanted more from their casserole? This scrumptious recipe uses broccoli florets and pearl onions that are cooked in a creamy sauce made using heavy whipping cream and cream cheese. Do not let the creamy cheese sauce distract you from the fact that pearl onions have numerous health benefits attached to its name, like cardiovascular health and being an antioxidant. Vegetarian families across the state welcomed the dish onto their dinner tables because of how delicious and healthy it was. Given that the recipe required only a few ingredients, the cheap nature of the recipe made it popular amongst working-class and middle-income households as well. The dish, however, never found mainstream success, which is the main reason why, as time passed, lesser tables had pearl onion broccoli bake as a main dish. Stuffed peppers can likely be traced back to the ancient Middle East, but stuffed pepper casserole? That is completely an American marvel. Stuffed pepper casserole was mostly famous in rural parts of the states where farming and growing chilies was a common practice. Households started using freshly grown chilies to create a casserole variation of stuffed peppers that would eventually be known as stuffed pepper casserole. Ground beef was used as an added protein, and peppers were cut up to be mixed with rice and cheese. This would then be cooked in a tomato sauce to create a deconstructed stuffed pepper dish. Today, you would barely come across this casserole on an average dinner spread at any home. The dish never became famous in the first place, so it's no surprise that barely anyone serves it anymore. However, taste-wise, it's a shame that stuffed pepper casserole is forgotten today. Cheesy broccoli casserole has a rich history, starting back in 1866 when Elmire Jolicoeur, a French-Canadian in New Hampshire, created the first modern casserole. This dish, combining soft broccoli with creamy cheese and crunchy breadcrumbs, was a favorite in many homes. However, as people started to prefer bold and complex flavors, this simple and comforting casserole became less popular. Though it's not seen much today, it's still remembered fondly by those who grew up with it. Despite its traditional roots, cheesy broccoli casserole fits well into a healthy diet, offering a tasty yet light option for mealtimes. Which casserole do you wish you still came across on tables today? Let us know in the comments. Give us a like and subscribe for more food history.